Good evening. It's Tuesday, 29 March 2022. Market Headlines is ready to provide you information from business and economic with me, Wicky Adrian. This is Market Headlines. In a hearing meeting with Commission 6 of the House of Representatives, Pertamina suspects that the scarcity of subsidized diesel in some regions is due to the misappropriation by large industries such as palm oil and mining industry.
Pertamina's President Director Nika Widiawati suspects that the scarcity of subsidized diesel is due to the misappropriations of fuel by large palm oil and mining industries. She conveyed this in a hearing with the Commission 6 of the House of Representatives. She said the portions of subsidized diesel to total diesel sales reached 93%, while non-subsidized only 7%. Based on the data, Pertamina and law enforcement officer will determine whether as much as 93% of subsidized diesel sales go to large industries.
Porsi dari solar subsidi itu terhadap keseluruhan penjualan solar hari ini mencapai 93%. Jadi yang non subsidi itu hanya 7%. Ya, ini harus kita lihat apakah betul gitu untuk menunjang sektor-sektor yang logistik dan juga industri yang tidak termasuk industri besar ya. Ini sebesar 93%. Ini yang harus dilihat. Antrian-antrian yang kita lihat nih kelihatannya justru dari industri-industri besar. Sawit, tambang, ini harus ditertibkan.
Nika said that subsidized diesel should not be used by the mining industry and palm oil plantations. Therefore, according to Nika, technical guidance is needed from the government regarding who has the right to consume subsidized diesel and its volume. IDX Channel reports.
Finance Ministry reports the state budget recorded a surplus of 19.7 trillion rupiah as of February 2022. Despite the surplus, the figure slowed from position of January 2022.
Finance Minister Sri Mulyani said the state budget recorded a surplus of 19.7 trillion rupiah as of February 2022. Despite the surplus, the figure sloped from the position of January 2022, which had a surplus of 28.9 trillion rupiah. Sri Mulyani said the surplus occurred because the realization of revenue was higher than government spending. It was recorded that state revenues reached 302.4 trillion rupiah as of February 2022. Meanwhile, state spending was only 282.7 trillion rupiah as of February 2022.
Keseimbangan primer kita mengalami surplus 61,7 triliun. Ini dibandingkan tahun lalu yang defisit 22,9 triliun, suatu pembalikan yang luar biasa. Total defisit kita, dalam hal ini total keseimbangan kita maksudnya adalah surplus 19,7. Dibandingkan tahun lalu yang defisit 63,3 triliun, ini juga pembalikan yang luar biasa. Namun ini belum menggambarkan keseluruhan cerita tahun 2022. Perjalanan masih cukup panjang dan masih cukup dinamis yang harus kita antisipasi.
For information, the government targets a deficit of 868 trillion rupiah or 4.85% of GDP in the 2022 state budget. Meanwhile, the realization of the state budget deficit throughout 2021 was 783.7 trillion rupiah. This figure is equivalent to 4.65% of GDP. The realization of the 2021 state budget deficit decreased when compared to 2020, which reached 5.14% to GDP. IDX Channel reports.
Indonesia G20 will strive to expand the development of a global health manufacturing and research center. Indonesian health minister stated that research and manufacturing capability should ideally exist in various nations, which means the knowledge redistribution process is necessary.
Indonesia G20 will strive to expand the development of a global health manufacturing and research center in preparations to prevent and respond to the pandemic in the future. Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin stated that research and manufacturing capability should ideally exist in various nations and not just in advanced nations or countries with high income. This means the knowledge redistribution process is necessary, he stated.
Yang ketiga adalah agenda mengenai redistribution dari Global Manufacturing Hub and Global Research Hub. Jadi untuk memperkuat arsitektur kesehatan global, kita perlu redistribusi dari kemampuan research dan kemampuan manufacturing dari vaksin, therapeutics atau diagnostik. Itu adalah aspek-aspek kesehatan yang sangat dibutuhkan pada masa pandemi.
For the G20 presidency, Sadikin highlighted 3 agendas in the health sector. The first agenda concerns building the global health system resiliency. The second involves harmonizing global health protocol standards to ensure similar standards on regulations related to PCR, quarantine, and others. The third relates to developing global manufacturing and knowledge center for the prevention, preparations, and response to the pandemic. IDX Channel reports.
Moving on to global update, Tesla has temporarily suspended its production at Shanghai factory over new lockdown. Meanwhile, Apple is planning to cut the output production as the Ukraine crisis and inflation start to weigh on demand. More stories on today's International Minute.
Tesla has suspended its production at its Shanghai factory. Operation will hold for 4 days after the city announced a COVID-19 lockdown amid rising cases. The company has notified its workers and suppliers of the move. The shutdown is expected to impact supplies of electric vehicles. It is the first gigafactory outside Tesla's home. Just last year, it produced around half of the electric car makers' vehicles. The company says that it was making its best effort to ensure production could continue at the plant. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, has called Russian leader Vladimir Putin a butcher who cannot remain in power during a visit to Poland, where he met the Ukrainian refugees displaced by the fighting in their country. Biden's comments mark an escalation of U.S. rhetoric toward Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine, but would not call for a regime change in Russia, a White House official said later. Biden's comments mark an escalation of U.S. rhetoric towards Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine, but were not a call for regime change in Russia, a White House official said later. Biden warned Putin against invading even an inch of a NATO nation's territory. Apple is planning to cut output of its iPhone and AirPods devices as the Ukraine crisis and looming inflation start to weigh on demand. The company plans to make about 20% fewer iPhone SEs next quarter, or lower production orders by about 2 million to 3 million units than originally planned due to weaker demand. The US tech giant also reduced orders for its AirPods wireless headphones by more than 10 million units for all of 2022, as it scales back the level of inventories due to the lukewarm demand. After a stunning run to the top of the CONCACAF table, the Canadian men's national team has qualified for the World Cup for the only second time in its history, returning to the grand stage for the first time in 36 years following a 4-0 win over Jamaica at BMO Field in Toronto on Sunday. Its return to the World Cup caps off a memorable period in Canada's soccer history. The Canadian men's team first and only appearance in the World Cup came in 1986 in Mexico, where it had finished last in its group with 3 losses.
PLN needs 357 trillion rupiah to import crude oil in 2022. Market headlines will be right back after the break.
Jika Anda adalah investor saham, Anda mendapat keuntungan di antaranya capital gain, yaitu keuntungan dari selisih harga beli dan harga jual saham. Dividen, yaitu pembagian laba kepada pemegang saham. Keuntungan lainnya, investor bisa memperoleh pendapatan tambahan dengan meminjamkan sahamnya melalui layanan pinjam meminjam efek atau PME. Apa itu PME? PME merupakan pinjaman efek sementara berupa saham dari investor untuk keperluan penyelesaian transaksi bursa. Apa saja manfaat yang didapatkan? Investor memperoleh keuntungan. Investor tetap dapat menerima dana sebagai pengganti dividen jika ada pembagian dividen saat sahamnya sedang dipinjamkan. Pendapatan yang diterima investor dari layanan PME dapat digunakan untuk membayar biaya penyimpanan saham. Saat nilai saham turun, investor tetap dapat memperoleh pendapatan hingga mengurangi potensi kerugian. Dan yang terpenting, KPEI menjamin pengembalian saham yang dipinjamkan sesuai waktu yang telah ditentukan. Menarik bukan? Prosesnya sangat sederhana. Investor cukup menghubungi perusahaan sekuritas dan menandatangani formulir perjanjian PME. Selanjutnya, jika terdapat kebutuhan penyelesaian transaksi bursa oleh peminjam, saham yang akan dipinjamkan diserahkan kepada KPEI melalui perusahaan sekuritas. Setelah proses PME selesai, maka KPEI akan mengembalikan saham yang telah dipinjamkan dan memberikan pendapatan kepada investor melalui perusahaan sekuritas. Segera hubungi perusahaan sekuritas Anda, Customer Care KPEI, atau kunjungi website kami untuk mengetahui layanan PME. PME, pinjamkan sahamnya, dapatkan manfaatnya.
Welcome back. PLN projects a foreign exchange requirement of 357 trillion rupiah to import crude oil in 2022. This is assuming a global oil price of $100 per barrel. PLN predicts that the foreign exchange needed to import oil will continue to increase in the next few years, whereas based on PLN's calculations, the total could reach 613 trillion rupiah in 2025. According to PLN, the total demand for oil in Indonesia reaches 1.4 million barrels per day. On the other hand, Indonesia's oil production target is only 700,000 barrels per day this year. Thus, there is a large difference between production and domestic demand for oil. Therefore, PLN considers there needs to be a shift in the use of transportation from fuel-based to electricity.
1,4 juta barrel per hari, di tahun 2025 akan naik menjadi 1,7 barrel per hari, 2030 naik menjadi 2,6, sampai 2050 naik menjadi 4,6 juta barrel per hari dengan asumsi pertumbuhan sekitar 5%.
The Ministry of Finance cancels the implementation of the carbon tax, which was initially planned to apply on April 1st, 2022. As explained by the ministry, the cancellation is because the government is still preparing a comprehensive regulation regarding the carbon tax.
The Ministry of Finance cancels the implementations of the carbon tax on April 1st, 2022. This is because the government is still preparing comprehensive implementing regulations. Head of the Fiscal Policy Agency of the Ministry of Finance, Febrio Kacaribu, explained that the implementations of the carbon tax is contained in the law of the harmonizations of tax regulations. Currently, said Febrio, the government's focus is to ensure that all community needs are met ahead of Ramadan and Eid. Then, the government also focuses on maintaining people's purchasing power.
Nah, di tengah-tengah kita menyiapkan semua peraturan perundang-undangan ini secara konsisten antara satu dengan yang lain, kita melihat ruang untuk menunda penerapan dari pajak karbon ini yang semula 1 April 2022, ini dapat kita tunda ke sekitar bulan Juli, sambil kita menyiapkan peraturan perundang-undangan yang semakin komprehensif tersebut, dan juga kita juga menyiapkan fokus pemerintah saat ini untuk memastikan suplai dari segala kebutuhan masyarakat dan juga harga dan daya beli masyarakat, khususnya menghadapi Ramadan dan juga Idul Fitri.
Previously, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani said the carbon tax will begin to be implemented on April 1st, 2022. The government will impose a carbon tax of 30 rupiah per kilogram. The Minister of Finance ensures that the implementations of the carbon tax will prioritize the principles of fairness and affordability by taking into account the business climate and small communities. IDX Channel report.
Minister of Cooperatives and SME says that MSME's digital transformation has become a necessity to rise and win the competition. However, the minister believes that the digital transformation not only pertains to presenting MSMEs on a digital platform, but is also a holistic effort to build an ecosystem of business processes.
Minister of Cooperatives and MSME, Teten Masduki, accentuated that MSME's digital transformation has become a necessity for them to survive, rise, and win the competition amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The minister revealed that in 2020, the number of digital MSMEs in Indonesia had totaled 8 million, and the figure then later increased to 17.59 million this year in e-commerce. However, the minister remarked that the digital transformation not only pertains to presenting MSMEs on digital platform, but it is also a holistic effort to build an ecosystem of business processes from upstream to downstream.
Transformasi digital bukan semata menghadirkan dalam platform digital. Transformasi digital adalah sebuah ikhtiar holistik, tidak hanya dari aspek pemasaran saja, melainkan juga membangun ekosistem yang meliputi proses bisnis dari hulu ke hilir seperti ditampilkan dalam slide ini. Dengan pendekatan digital, kami optimis target yang diberikan Bapak Presiden dapat tercapai.
With the application of digital approach, the minister believed that the target of 30 million MSMEs entering into the e-commerce space can be achieved to optimize the potential of Indonesia's digital economy. This effort is made to ensure that the digital economy's potential of 4,500 trillion rupiah in 2030 can be fully utilized by cooperative, MSMEs, and the community. IDX Channel reports.
The government provides leeway for the community throughout Ramadan 2022, including for worship activities. However, the easing will be carried out in stages, with several provisions being drafted by the central government. The government spokesperson for the handling of COVID-19, Wicky Adrian, revealed that although the government had made easing measures, the public was still asked not to lower their vigilance against the spread of COVID-19 and to continue to apply health protocols during their daily activities. As it is known, over the past 2 years, the government has made various policy modifications for community activities, where every policy taken has been confirmed through a careful consideration process in order to prevent the risk of a more massive transmission.
Protokol kesehatan dengan baik, menggunakan masker dan selalu menjaga jarak atau menghindari kerumunan, serta rajin untuk mencuci tangan, sebenarnya tidak apa-apa. Maka dari itu aktivitas yang makin meningkat, apakah pergi ke tempat beribadah, ataukah juga mungkin ke pasar dan seterusnya, tidak apa-apa, asal betul-betul protokol kesehatannya dijaga ketat agar melindungi diri dan melindungi orang lain.
Maybank Indonesia issued bonds worth 500 billion rupiah in 2022 after the break on market headlines.
Presidensi G20 di Indonesia akan mendorong upaya bersama untuk pemulihan ekonomi dunia dengan tema Recover Together, Recover Stronger. Kami akan menjamu Yang Mulia dan Bapak Ibu di hamparan pantai Bali yang indah yang menginspirasi gagasan-gagasan inovatif untuk produktivitas G20 ke depan. Sampai bertemu di Indonesia, terima kasih.
Perbincangan hangat tentang isu dan kebijakan ekonomi terkini yang diulas secara mendalam bersama narasumber terpercaya. Market Review, Senin sampai Jumat, jam 10 waktu Indonesia bagian Barat, hanya di IDX Channel.
Kewaspadaan terhadap penyebaran Omikron harus terus diperketat.
Ya, hal ini sebagai antisipasi dari masuknya virus varian lainnya ke Indonesia.
Awali hari Anda dengan informasi dunia ekonomi yang diulas dari berbagai sudut pandang. Simak pula analisa pasar modal dan inspirasi bisnis dari berbagai perusahaan rintisan. Power Breakfast, Senin sampai Jumat, jam 8.30, hanya di IDX Channel.
Welcome back at the Jakarta Composite Index Intraday Movement. Earlier today, JCI was opened at the level of 7,058.94, and then approaching the closing time of the session. The index was on the level of 7,042.21. Then the index was showing weakening trend by the second session closing time. Index was closed at the level of 7,011.68. In short, JCI went down 0.54%. And next, we're going to see the sectoral movement leading the dynamics of today's trading. We got technology as the leader of the strengthening trend that went up 0.31%, and cyclic went up 0.27%. And next, we got transportation and logistics as the weakening or the leader of the weakening trend, went down 2.43%, and industry went down 1.02%. And moving on to top gainers and top losers, here are the key highlights from today's trading session. BMRI went up 0.63% to the level of 7,925 rupiah per share. Buka went up 3.69% to the level of 346 rupiah per share. BIPI went up 9.76% to the level of 90 rupiah per share. And Unilever went up 0.58% to the level of 3,480 rupiah per share. Meantime, the top losers for today's trading, we got BBCA went down 0.63% to the level of 7,850 rupiah per share. Bank BRI or BBRI went down 0.85% to the level of 4,690 rupiah per share. Antam went down 3.8% to the level of 2,530 rupiah per share. And Telkom went down 0.87% to the level of 4,560 rupiah per share. And we're going to see the intraday movement of rupiah towards US dollar. Opened at the level of 14,361. Rupiah was also showing weakening trend towards US dollar and was closed at the level of 14,310. In summary, rupiah went down 0.72%. Maybank Indonesia plans to issue bonds worth 500 billion rupiah in the second half of 2022. Management of Maybank explained that the issuance of these bonds will depend on the company's growth in the first half of this year.
Bank Maybank Indonesia plans to issue bonds worth 500 billion rupiah again in second half of 2022. Finance Director of Maybank Indonesia, Tila Gavati Nadason, said the issuance of these bonds will depend on the company's growth in the first half of this year. She also stated that he would ensure a stable economic improvement in the first quarter of 2022 before deciding to return to the bond market. However, in the second quarter, two of Maybank's subsidiaries, namely Warm Finance and Maybank Finance, will enter the bond market first. Meanwhile, regarding the repayment of maturing bonds, President Director of Maybank Indonesia, Taswin Zakaria, said that the company has provided a special fund of 237.25 billion rupiah to pay off the principal and interest of the bonds. In detail, the principal of the bonds is 232.2 billion rupiah,
and the interest on the 12 bonds is worth 5.05 billion rupiah. IDX Channel reports.
And the news close our market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, your trustworthy economic business and capital market channel. I'm Wicky Adrian. Have a nice evening and stay safe.